The Denver Broncos in 2024 were a very happy surprise. I and many of you people that are watching this video, even if you're Denver Broncos fans, would probably agree when I say that the draft selection of Bo Nix last year was not met with very happy remarks from either the national media or even some local media members for the Denver Broncos. But after he became the first rookie in franchise history to start every single game of the season, and the Broncos defense elevated themselves to becoming one of the best in the entire league, the Broncos now are viewed as one of the best teams going into 2025. However, could the Broncos have been a major beneficiary of a weak schedule? And could Bo Nix have been a beneficiary of the fact that there was maybe a few defenses that really didn't take him that seriously as a threat? Now, I'll start with the defense going into 2025. Last season was an absolutely incredible one for this group. And I think it was a major reversal from where they were in 2023 statistically. Now, this could be attributed to the fact that it was the second season under defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, who has had a long career as defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach in the NFL. But I also don't doubt the fact that there's a trio of outstanding defensive linemen that are blossoming into possible stars all at the same time. Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper, and Zach Allen all are guys that are getting to that point where many NFL players' careers kind of boom into those stardom type careers about 4 to 6 years after entering the league, where they turn that corner and find themselves in great positions time after time. The trio last year combined for 32 and a half sacks, and both Bonito and Allen were voted as second team All-Pro by the Associated Press. You can't get very far talking about the Denver Broncos defense in 2025 without mentioning the Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain. Now, I mentioned Vance Joseph before. He's made a long career out of being an incredible coach for defensive backs. He's had guys like Patrick Peterson in his past. And 2024 seemed like the ultimate culmination of those teachings for Patrick Surtain. Surtain became just the second pure cornerback to win the award since 1992, and the first Denver Bronco to ever win the award of Defensive Player of the Year. Surtain made a living in 2024 out of taking the number one option for the opposing team and making them seem obsolete. For the first time in his career, Surtain was attributed with 0 missed tackles according to Football Reference. And opposing receivers gained well less than 3 yards after the catch in 2024. This showed not only his ability to take the ball away, where he had 4 interceptions, including one for a 100-yard touchdown, but also the ability to limit receivers after the catch from gaining any momentum as well. Now, while the defense was really good last year, I could bring up the fact that in 2024, the Broncos faced a pretty bad list of quarterbacks for a majority of their games. Quarterbacks by the name of Geno Smith, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Spencer Rattler, Bryce Young, Kirk Cousins, Aiden O'Connell, Jameis Winston, Anthony Richardson, and Carson Wentz. But I think you could also take that point and kind of make it into a positive for Denver as well, because it showed that this team could handle their business no matter who they were playing against. And there really were only 3 games last year, games against the Ravens, Chargers, and Bengals, where I think the defense could really be assigned blame as to why they lost last year. But even with the poor quarterbacks they faced last year, Denver was great, and they should be treated as so. And the defense is only going to get better going into this year. They drafted Jahdae Barron in the first round from Texas, and they signed instant impact starters at positions of need, like safety Talanoa Hufanga and linebacker Dre Greenlaw, who both came over from the San Francisco 49ers. This team is going to have playmakers in the back end, and they're going to have game wreckers up front that's going to cause havoc for any offense, regardless of the talent that they have at QB. Now on to the offense. We know of the complete surprise that Bo Nix was last year, But other contributors like Devon Vele, who they drafted in the 7th round last year and ended up being the second, he had the second most receiving yards for the team last year. And this was the best year for Cortland Sutton in a very long time in 2024. And these two guys were very key to aiding the success of Bo Nix, especially considering that the group of Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Andrick Estime really failed to get much going on the ground. They were 21st in terms of yards per attempt. Now, that something is usually that is to the demise of a young quarterback's success, but Bo Nix was able to succeed in spite of the fact of this poor running game. The Broncos made some pretty notable additions through free agency and the draft as well on the offense this year. They made the notable draft selections of wide receiver Pat Bryant and running back RJ Harvey this year. Now, Pat Bryant, after the draft, was already drawing comparisons from his head coach Sean Payton to that of wide receiver Michael Thomas, who Sean Payton coached for a solid stretch down in New Orleans. And Michael Thomas was considered one of, if not at one point, the best receiver in the entire league. And there is reason to believe that Sean Payton knows what he's going to get out of RJ Harvey in the backfield. And considering that Sean Payton is the same guy who had a major say in the New Orleans Saints drafting guys like Reggie Bush, Mark Ingram, and Alvin Kamara down in New Orleans, I think there's a pretty good chance that Sean Payton's going to be able to use RJ Harvey to the fullest of his potential. Now, Sean Payton also might have gotten his joker in free agency this year when the team signed Evan Ingram, the tight end from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Evan Ingram had a pretty down year last year, under 400 yards, but that was almost only contributed by the fact that he missed 8 games last year due to injury. Now, this is a thing that kind of has popped up a lot in Evan Ingram's career in terms of having injuries and having not so productive years. But again, this is a guy that's coming to a team where he knows his head coach has all the belief in his ability. He's coming to a team where he's kind of going to be one of the main options. It's going to be Cortland Sutton, Evan Ingram, Devon Vele, and whoever can contribute after that. But again, Evan Ingram is a really solid player. He's a guy that in this joker role that Sean Payton always brings up, he's a guy that can be put anywhere on the field, and that's something that Sean Payton is going to use to his own success. I mentioned earlier that the Denver Broncos had some shoddy competition when it came to their opponents last year, but it should also be mentioned that last year the Denver Broncos, even when they played good teams, they had a pretty bad record against those teams. I believe the record was something like 2-9 in the 11 games that Denver had against winning record opponents. One of those wins came against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 3, and the other win came against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 18, when the Kansas City Chiefs were sitting Patrick Mahomes, they were sitting Travis Kelce, they were sitting anybody that was major on their defense like Chris Jones. So, when you look at it, their losses against teams that were at full strength and had a winning record last year, like Baltimore, when they lost 10-41, or like against the Cincinnati Bengals and LA Chargers late in the year. And especially, you could also look at the fact that they got beat up pretty badly by the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round this year, 31-7. And when you compare that to who they're going to play in 2025, it's somewhat similar. You start with playing rookie number 1 overall pick Cam Ward in his first ever game as a starting quarterback and as an NFL player. Then you go to Indianapolis to face, whoever they're going to have at quarterback. It could be Daniel Jones. It could be Anthony Richardson. We don't know yet who's going to be starting in Indianapolis. But then you have 3 really tough quarterbacks back-to-back with Herbert, Burrow, and Hurts. And then it's another 2-week stretch where it's maybe Fields and then you play the other New York team, and maybe it's Russell Wilson, maybe it's Jackson Dart, maybe it's even Jameis Winston. And then two, like, I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this here. There's good players that they're going against at the quarterback position and good offenses that they're going against. And then there's some bad ones. But I feel like overall, this season looks a lot tougher on paper than it did last year. And for that reason, I'm going to kind of set the floor for this team at like 7-10 because, again, there's a lot tougher competition. And Denver last year, when they played really good competition and really good teams, they came up short most of the time. And even though I think this team is talented, I think they're coached pretty well with Sean Payton. I think they have a pretty good group on defense, if not one of the best ones on defense. They're going to be tested each and every week. And they're going to be kind of put to the test of whether or not it was just a one-year fluke of everything going right and playing bad teams at the right time? Or was this a team that was actually really good last year and just the games they lost against good opponents, they got caught at the wrong time? But there's really tough games on this schedule. There's always going to be your 2 games against Kansas City and your 2 games against the Chargers. And if the Raiders are any better than they were last year, maybe Las Vegas kind of catches Denver on a wrong note. You just never know who you're going to get each and every week. And so again, I set the floor for this team at probably 7-10, but the ceiling for this team is probably 11-6, pretty similar to what they were last year. And this is a team that, again, could make the playoffs. I don't have them winning the division or really making any crazy noise in the playoffs, but a team that, they could win a playoff game, or they could find themselves in a really good matchup in the divisional round against Kansas City or against, whoever else is around at that time. And they could be a really good team to watch. They could be a really fun team to watch. They've got a lot of young players, but I think this team is still developing. This is still a team that is looking to improve on the offensive side of the ball just through experience. And I think 2025 is going to be a good year to decide whether or not this team is for real or this team gets bad teams in front of them and handles their business.